Hey guys, how's it going? It's Andy from Magoo Investing. Happy Monday. So I decided to put this video off for a couple days, specifically because I didn't want to be insensitive to the people that are having problems with all the power outages in places like Texas. I live up in Portland, and in the past week we've had some power problems in the same way. Obviously not as bad, because Portland is a little better at handling the cold weather because we do get snow about once a year, but I think for a decent amount of last week, people didn't have power. And I don't want this to be a political video at all. The reasoning behind why I decided to buy more renewable energy stocks was definitely an emotional response, but it's because we've seen the need for changes to the infrastructure of the United States and across the world. So I bought 2 new renewable energy stocks, and that's going to be the topic of today's videos. I'm going to be explaining my full renewable energy portfolio. I'm going to be talking about some of the science and use my grad degree in science and education to kind of explain the reasoning behind why this type of cold weather is not going to be uncommon. It is often described as a once in a 100-year storm, but if you've been paying attention, we've been having once in a 100-year floods like every couple years, and it's only going to be getting worse. So I'm going to be talking about some of the doom and gloom, some of the science about the reasoning why we need to invest in renewable energies. Then I'm going to be talking about these stocks that I bought, and then I'm going to be talking about the outlook going forward, because as of right now, a lot of the energy stocks are getting hit, and they're actually the reason why my portfolio is down this week. But I think the long-term outlook on renewable energy stocks are fantastic, and I do see this as a buying opportunity. So when we got about 8 inches of snow in Portland, pretty much everything shut down. We get like one big snowstorm a year, and it shuts everything down. And the reason behind that is, I'll put up the topography map of Portland, is there's a lot of hills. We don't have the infrastructure to get rid of all the snow, so it shuts down for a while. But snow is not uncommon, but if you remember in 2020, we've had a lot of very crazy weather events, and these are not uncommon. So I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things to refresh your memory, because 2020 was crazy. Obviously, we had the pandemic. In Oregon, we had record wildfires that made it so that we had an air quality index, or an AQI, of 477 in Portland. And in Bend, which is just a couple hours east of me, I was at 500. And 500 is the upper edge of this scale for air quality. So things are bad when you hit the max of a scale that in theory should never be hit. We had record flooding this past year. We had a record year for hurricanes, and we had the first recorded double hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. So pretty crazy stuff for that. And then with the Texas situation, this will likely happen again. Part of the reasoning behind the Texas situation has to do with changes in global circulation. There's something called the polar vortex, which is caused by the Coriolis effect, which brings me back to my college days. Basically, what you need to know is the temperature gradient between places like the poles and closer to the equator. The difference between the hot and the cold keeps it so that the cold air gets trapped up in the polar areas. And so you get the polar vortex of this spinning circulation around the globe of this really cold air. But as we've had global warming and climate change, the gradient has become less pronounced, and that's resulted in this polar vortex dipping down below. And so if you looked at a map of the US with temperatures last week, you saw this huge kind of like a bell-shaped curve that was going down and really got into Texas. And this is the polar vortex. It's called a wavy polar vortex, and it's bringing the cold air from the poles down to places like Texas where it's not used to having. And so going forward, we're going to be seeing a lot more stuff like this, and climate change is just going to become more pronounced. And so we need to make a change. And what we've been seeing with climate change is an example of a positive feedback loop. The idea is that, for example, if we remove trees, we're burning those trees, that releases the carbon that they've sequestered, which leads to higher CO2 readings, which keeps more energy in the atmosphere, which in turn will warm the planet, which will melt more ice, which makes it so that when we melt ice, we're not reflecting as much of the solar energy back out into space, so we're going to be keeping more energy. And this positive feedback loop is, once something starts happening, it's like you're hitting the accelerator and things are going to start getting worse and worse. And that's the reason why climate scientists have been so outspoken about the need to start making changes now, because if we don't, it's going to be really hard to stop. And so that's my biggest bull thesis for why I'm investing into renewable energy stocks. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and finding places that you can invest that you're passionate about are fantastic. For people watching this, it doesn't have to be in renewable energy, but I think it's great to invest in something that you're very passionate about. It can be something like EVs, it can be stuff like different technology options, but I think it's a fantastic way to invest your money, because you're investing in a future you want to see, and you can benefit from that, and you can be helping fund it, which is, I think, a fantastic thing. So now I want to talk about the 4 renewable energy stocks that I have in my portfolio at this point. I want to start with the 2 most recent additions. And admittedly, I did not have the best entry into these stocks. Last week, I was definitely having an emotional response to the whole Texas situation. I bought into 2 of these stocks that I've been eyeing for a long time, and as a result, I'm down like 5 to 10% on each of these positions. But I planned ahead. I wanted to take a feeler position, is what I call them. It's a smaller position where if things go poorly, I did not take my normal position size, and I can buy at a lower price and lower my average cost. And if things go well, I have enough money in there where it will make me money. I'll be happy with that. But so I started small, and I will add if things fall further. The first stock I bought has to do with the solar energy video that I made, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and I'll link that above right now if you missed that. But in that video, I talked about an ETF that follows the overall sector, and I bought into the ETF that follows the solar sector, which is ticker symbol TAN. In that video, I talked about Enphase Energy, which has been doing extremely well, but it is very overextended. As I mentioned, I think it's up 11,000% in the past 5 years. So I always talk about the general rule of thumb that I follow, that if I don't fully understand a sector, I buy the ETF because it allows you to benefit from the increasing value of the sector, but you don't have to pick specific stocks and figure out which one has the competitive advantage over the other. So buying the ETF in a sector that you don't fully understand all the companies, I think is a very beneficial thing, and that's the reason why I decided to buy this ETF instead of picking something like a First Solar, which I'm a huge fan of, or an Enphase Energy, which I'm also a fan of. So I'm buying the whole sector because I'll benefit from the explosive growth that we're expected to see with this industry. So here's my bull thesis for why I bought into the solar ETF, TAN. From 2009 to 2017, manufacturing costs for solar energy stuff fell 86%. It has made solar installations much more affordable, and it's become very realistic for businesses and homeowners to be putting them onto their properties. And so this is one of these things where this is also a positive feedback loop. As people get more involved, the cost is going to go down. It's going to make more people be buying in and implementing solar energy strategies into their energy. And so this is a very positive thing. Number two, the industry has reached its 2020 goals back in 2017. So they have been exceeding their expectations in areas like residential solar costs, which went down to 11 cents per kilowatt hour. As more people get on board, the cost will continue to come down. That's another positive feedback loop. Number three, tax credits are huge incentives for people looking to get into solar. As of right now, you can currently write off 26% of the total cost, and I'm expecting that number is going to increase in the future as we do have the Democrats controlling the House, Senate, and the presidency. So if they want to get something passed, they do have the ability to do that. And I think tax credits is a fantastic way to motivate people to buy into solar because, as I say, money talks. And if you can write off more and more of the installation costs, it's more beneficial for people to look into that as an energy solution going forward. Then the second green energy stock that I bought is Brookfield Renewable, ticker symbol BEP. This has been a stock that I've been eyeing for a long time, pretty much since I decided I wanted to be investing in renewables, but I never ended up pulling the trigger. But my emotional response to the Texas problems is the reason why I decided to finally pull the trigger and buy into BEP. The reason I really like Brookfield is that they don't really focus on one single area of renewable energy. I bought TAN, which focuses on solar energy, but Brookfield doesn't just focus on one. They are mostly involved with hydroelectric, but they have been expanding to wind and solar facilities. Right now, 65% of their free cash flow is going towards hydroelectric, but they are seeing the switch that comes from, they bought Exelon Solar Business for $810 million, and they're expected to have 18 gigawatts of capacity for solar in the next couple years. This will expand their energy capacity that has increased six-fold since 2015, and they have locations in North America, Latin America, Asia, and Europe. While they aren't innovating in one specific area, I love the diversity of the type of energy that they're investing in. It's kind of the same reason why I bought into TAN as an ETF, because it follows the sector for solar. In my mind, I think of Brookfield as being, it has the best of both worlds. It has the focus on some of the really exciting places like solar, but it has the reliable energy sources like the hydroelectric, which has been around for a long time and has been very, very good for the people that have used it. Over the past 20 years, the company's had an annualized return of 18% since the year 2000, which has destroyed the returns of the S&P 500 that's in single digits for their annualized return basis. Looking forward, the company expects annual returns in the low teens, which will likely beat the rest of the overall market, and part of their returns comes from a 3.3% dividend that over the history of the company being public has never dipped below 3%. So to summarize, here's my bull thesis for Brookfield. Number one, it's a well-established renewable energy company that has a solid track record. Number two, they're expanding to more than just hydroelectric after they bought the Exelon Solar Business, and I think that's very exciting. Number three, their expected returns are supposed to beat the market, with returns in the low teens, which is not as sexy as some of the returns that we've talked about in the past year, but once the market craziness calms down, returns in the low teens are what you're going to be aiming for. And so that's a huge reason why I decided to buy in. The 3% dividend is nice and will allow me to bring in some extra cash to buy more shares. And then I'll quickly go over the other two renewable energy stocks that I currently have in my portfolio, but I did make a video on my birthday when I bought more of these shares, and I'll link that above right now. So my favorite stock of 2021 is still General Electric stock, ticker symbol GE. I currently have a complex position when it comes to GE. I have a covered call against the 100 shares that I own at this point, and then I have a remaining 50 shares that are long for the company, and then I have a LEAP, which is actually an acronym, which stands for Long-Term Equity Anticipation Security, that will expire in January of 2022. The reason behind this is I sell the covered call, which is part of the wheel strategy, to bring in extra income to buy more shares. And this is something that I like doing on companies that I don't really expect to shoot up in price significantly over like a 1 week basis. I do expect GE to go up over the long term, which is why I have the naked shares and why I have the call option that will increase in value if the company continues to increase in price, which it has done a lot pretty recently. And so this is just kind of my strategy of doing it. I don't think GE is a stock that's going to shoot up to the $15 price target that I have by the end of the year within the next earnings report. And that's why I've been selling options, bringing in the premium to buy more shares, and that's just my personal strategy. So here's my bull thesis for General Electric. Number one, I think this is a fantastic recovery play that doesn't get talked about enough. Aviation is our largest and most profitable business, and with air travel coming back and some of the positive news that we heard from today, which is the reason why my whole portfolio is up on the day, because my renewable energy stocks not doing so hot today. The airlines with Southwest has really been bolstering my portfolio today, but things should be getting back to normal in the next year, and having the most profitable part of their business come back will be great for them. Number two, they're already involved in major wind projects by providing turbines for a project in Lithuania, and they also provide the wind turbines for the world's largest wind bank off the coast of the UK. Number three, I think this is a company that will likely get government funding for future renewable energy projects because they are a very large US company, and I'm just kind of guessing that the way things are going to go is that the US government is going to want to invest in US companies, not the foreign-based ones. And so having a large company like GE be a part of the equation, I think will be very likely that they'll get some funding in the future, which will boost the share price. And then my final renewable energy position is with NextEra Energy, ticker symbol NEE. First, NextEra is the largest energy company in the United States, passing stuff like Chevron and ExxonMobil, which is very interesting to see, but it has fallen in the past couple weeks as a result of the Texas news. But in my mind, when one of your favorite stocks goes on a dip, I think of that as being on a discount, and I will likely buy more when a lot of my cash that's being tied up in a Zynga position will likely go away by the end of next week, and I'll be adding to this position. Here's my bull thesis on NextEra Energy. Number one, I think there's safety and size. Investing in the largest US energy company is a fantastic thing in my opinion, and that's the reason why I feel decently safe buying the dip instead of thinking that this might be like a free fall. Number two, it's had an incredible track record. Their return since 2000, they've seen a compound annual growth rate of 17.8% with dividends and 14.8% without that dividend. And speaking of that dividend, they are dividend aristocrats, meaning that they have raised their dividend payout every year for the past 25 years. So this is a company that's a fantastic track record. They're the largest energy company in the United States, and they do have a lot of production capabilities with renewable energy, and I think that's very exciting. So as of right now, I'm very bullish on renewable energies as a whole. We might see some problems in the short term as a lot of the problems with Texas has been politicized, but I think the long-term outlook on the sector is so positive, and that's why it's the largest part of my portfolio right now, even beating out stuff like technology, which has been the dominant force in my portfolio for a long time. So let me know what renewable energy stocks you guys are looking to buy or have bought in the past, and let me know what you thought about my two recent additions to my portfolio with TAN, which is the solar ETF, and then Brookfield Renewable, which is ticker symbol BEP. Thanks for watching. I appreciate all the support, and I will see you in the next video.